Hey everyone, I am finally going to make the video where I show you how I measure existing threads so I can design in Fusion 360 a cap and then 3D print it. This is just a conditioner bottle or a shampoo bottle that I took the label off of. But this type of bottle is really good to demonstrate how you do this. So there will be a few measurements we need to take. I think 4 measurements in total. I'm going to try to get in real close here. The first measurement I like to take, that's probably the least important measurement, is the height of the lid. So you can see this bottom ring here really isn't part of the thread. That's kind of just like a lid stop. So I usually measure from, and not all threads or bottles will have this. So my lid fully seats down onto this, I usually measure from here to this top of this to the top of the neck. And so for this one, and I'm actually going to take these measurements and we are going to design a cap exactly for this bottle. So let me zero out my caliper here and we will try to get this in focus. And so I'm at about 11.52, 11.5. So I may bump that up to, let's go up to 12 and see what that looks like. There's 12. That gives me a little space up at the top. I'm going to bump that to 12. So the inside height of my lid is going to be 12 millimeters. The next measurement we need is the pitch. And what the pitch is the measurement between two threads. If we're looking at this orthographically, so as like a 2D image, you're going to measure on the same spot of the thread here to here, and that is our pitch. So you can see they kind of come to a point here. So I'm going to try to measure right on those points and see what our pitch is. So let's see if I can do this again. Sorry, this is kind of tough to do. I'm going to first do it without worrying about the camera, and then I'll go back and show you. A little less. So we're actually almost exactly right at 4. So there's your 4 mark, and I'm just going to zoom this up so you can see. There's my calipers. So our pitch is 4 millimeters. Okay. Now the next, sorry, and I know I'm kind of doing things upside down. My caliper should be like this, but kind of at an awkward table here. So I'm kind of doing it as best I can. So the next 2 measurements, or we need 2 more measurements, is we need the major diameter and the minor diameter. Now, the major diameter is the diameter or the distance including the threads. So your distance from the tip of this thread to the tip of that thread, that is called your major diameter. And it looks like in this case, if you kind of look at this bottom lip, it looks pretty much exactly the same as the threads themselves. So in this case, I can just put my caliper on that bottom lip and looks like I'm at about 32. I'm just going to call that 32. We can have some slop in this lid, and these are numbers we can change. So 32 millimeters for the, let me just double check I had that right. Yeah, 31.94. So 32 millimeters for the major diameter. And now we want to measure the minor diameter. So the minor diameter is this bottleneck, the diameter of the bottleneck, not including the threads. And so on this, it looks like I have a little space right up at the top. So right here, and then on the other side where I can put my calipers and not touch any threads. So let me put it like this, if you can see that, no threads on it. And I'm at 29.73. Okay, so we have our height of our lid. We measured the pitch. We measured the major diameter and the minor diameter. And so next we can take those numbers into Fusion to figure out the cap.
All right, now we're in Fusion. I have got my measurements here on this sticky note. This will disappear once I start working, but let's just review. We've got the inside height of the cap at 12 millimeters, the major diameter 32 millimeters, minor, and the pitch. So the way I make caps is by starting with a cylinder, and there are many ways to do it. Don't take this video as the only way you can do it. I'm just showing you how I do it. So this cylinder has to be 12 millimeters by 32 millimeters. Remember, the 32 millimeters is going to be the inside diameter of that cap. And the height, of course, is the height of the cap. So let's create a cylinder. And actually, I tell you what, before we do that, we're going to do something a little different. We're going to go and create some parameters, and this will be important later when we have to tweak the size of the cap. So you can actually click right here, or it's under modify, change parameters. And if you've never used parameters before, it is not very hard at all. It may seem like it could be, but it's not. So all we're going to do is hit plus, and we're going to type in inside cap. And this will be the diameter, and let's just do diameter as well. You can't have any spaces in this name, so that's why I put these little underscores. So inside cap diameter, the units is going to be in millimeters, and we're going to put 32. Remember, that's the major diameter, and I want some clearance between the cap and the neck of the bottle. So I'm going to put like 32.3. And let's see how, actually, let's just do 32.4, and let's see how that works. So we'll hit OK. And I believe that's the only parameter we need. And this will make sense later. And I'm shooting this for the first time, and I didn't practice, and I'm going to do it all in one take. So I think this is how I want to do this. So let's hit OK. So now let's create this cylinder. We're going to click on this bottom plane. We're going to drag the mouse to the origin, click, and instead of clicking or typing in the diameter we want, we're going to type in that parameter. So what was that? Inside. So you start typing it, IN, inside, and it pops up. So then you can click on that, and then we can drag. Oops, I don't know if that stuck. So let's go over to this panel here. The height is going to be 12. The diameter is going to be inside cap diameter. And we'll hit OK. So now you can see inside cap diameter, height of 12, and we'll hit OK. Now watch what happens. If we go back into parameters, I can change this from here. So let's just do 50, enter. And now it changed the diameter of that. And so let's go back to 32.4, I think is what I had it, and we'll hit OK. Okay, so this is the area or the volume of the inside of the cap. So now we need a wall thickness, right? And so what I use is shell. And instead of shelling out from the inside, we're gonna thicken it from the outside. So the direction, usually when you go into shell, the direction is set to inside, and that will shell out the inside. So if I hit 2 millimeters here, it basically just cuts away 2 millimeters from the inside. But I wanted to add it to the outside instead, and I'm gonna do 1.2 millimeters. And I chose 1.2 because when you're 3D printing something, the layer lines are 0.4 millimeters wide. So this will give us 3 outside walls on this cap. And you can make this whatever you want. So hit OK. So if we look here now on this cap, if we hold shift, click this edge, and we come down here, you can see that's still 12 millimeters. And if we click on the inside diameter, you can see this is 32.4, which is exactly what we want. Okay, so now let's make a sketch. And we're going to use this sketch to kind of give us some guidelines here. And this is maybe where I differ from other people. This just made sense to me when I did it. So let's create a construction plane. We're going to click on this top surface, and we're just going to drag it up a little bit and hit OK. That way we have a plane just a little above that cap. Let's create a sketch, and we're going to make two circles. We're going to make one circle for the major diameter and one circle for the minor diameter. So 32 millimeters and 29.75. So hit C for circle, click on the origin, type in 32, hit circle again, and then type in 29.75. Now I'm going to change these to construction lines. So I'm going to click on this line and hit X on the keyboard. Click on this line, X on the keyboard. So this represents the minor diameter of the bottleneck and the major diameter of the bottleneck. And you can see this line is the inside of our cap. So there has to be some clearance here between the inside of our cap and that major diameter. And I'm not sure this is enough clearance yet, so we'll kind of come back to that. So let's finish sketch. And let's hide this sketch, and now let's start making our threads. So to do that, I'm going to create a coil. And when you create a coil, it wants to know where to start the coil. And I want to start the coil on this face. Now that we have that plane or selected or face selected, we can come over to the center, click, and drag. And instead of typing the 32.4, I'm going to type in inside cap diameter and hit enter. And I don't know why that doesn't, maybe you can't do it from there. I'm not sure why that didn't stick. So we're going to do the diameter as inside cap diameter. Now it's red because it's cutting. We don't want it to cut, so let's just go to new body for now. And the section size is the diameter of each of the individual thread here. So let's just take this down to like 2. And it's going up instead of down. So that's the height. And one thing to keep in mind, and this is where maybe it gets confusing, is the height is actually the pitch. So we have a 4 millimeter pitch, which means in one revolution, if we change that to 1, this height has to be 4 millimeters. It's still going in the opposite direction, so we have to add a negative sign. Now, if you remember when we measured that bottle cap, we measured from the point of that thread to the point of the thread, and that was 4 millimeters, and that's exactly what we have. Oops, I just clicked on something. What did I click? Up, diameter. Let's go inside diameter cap. So from this point to this point is 4 millimeters, which is exactly what we measured on our cap. So let's say we wanted to do maybe 1.5 revolutions. Well, now we don't have 4 millimeters to 4 millimeters here. We have 4 millimeters from here, and if we rotate to here, so this has to be in increments of 4. So if we have 1.5 times 4, we actually need this to be 6. And now we still have the 4 millimeter to 4 millimeter. I hope that makes sense. Okay, so before we get out of this, let's do a few things. You can keep this as a circle, but we're actually going to change it to a triangle. Let's go up to this bottom view here. Actually, let me backtrack. It's really important. If you go down to your display settings and camera, you want this to be at perspective with ortho faces. And this is what this means. Let's just go to perspective here. And when we're out in 3D space, you're getting the perspective. And if you go to one of the faces, you're not in perspective. You're still in that perspective. So you see how this is rounded here and this is rounded up here, because we're still looking at a 3D image. If you go to camera, perspective with ortho faces, do you see how it squares off here? Whenever you're in one of these bottom, top, left, front planes, you get shown a 2D picture instead of a 3D picture. That's really important for these sketches that we made here. This is where, sorry, I lost my train of thought. This is where that sketch we did comes in handy. So we know we have the thickness of the wall of the cap, and this inside edge can't go past this major diameter line. This next section from here to here are the threads. This inside diameter of the thread can't go past the minor diameter line, right? Because if this went past that, it would be too tight. It wouldn't fit on the bottle. So let's say you had this at 3 instead of 2. So let's take for the thread. So let's change that to 3. Now look what happened. Here's now the inside diameter of those threads, and it goes past that line, which means this physically cannot fit on that bottle. So let's just change this back to 2. And there we have a nice gap, or a nice clearance. And let's just hit OK. So you honestly could leave the threads just like this, and then we still have to move them. Actually, let's just move them really quick. So if we go to bodies, remember we made these threads as new body. I'm going to hide this sketch. Let's click on that body, hit move, and let's just bring this down a little bit so it's inside the cap. And I print plenty of threads with rounded bodies like this, and it works totally fine. But I kind of want to show you a different way of doing it so you can learn a few more things. So let's go back into the coil and let's change this to a triangle instead. And you have a few choices. You have external and internal. Internal means the point of the triangle is pointing to the inside, and external, of course, would mean the point's pointing to the outside. So we want internal. And let's, instead of on center, you see the triangle is centered with this. Let's just go on inside. Okay. Let's go to our bottom view again. Let's turn on that sketch. And you can see that that is way too far. Here's the inner diameter of that thread. Here's that minor diameter. So we made this way too big. So let's go to section size. Let's go to maybe 1.5. Perfect. And it's still going over the edge of that minor diameter, but that's okay. So let's hit OK. The reason that's okay is because we don't want this sharp point here. So we're going to chamfer this. We're going to click on that edge. We're going to go up to chamfer, and let's go like 0.5 and hit OK. Let's go to that bottom view again. Now you can see we have some nice clearance there. I hope that makes sense what I'm showing you here. So now we know those threads will fit. So how much clearance do we actually have? Let's test that. And the way we do that is creating another sketch. So this time I'm just going to create the sketch right on this top surface, right on the top surface of this cap. It doesn't really matter. We could do another construction line, but we don't need to. So we're going to click on that. And now I want to project these lines. So to project something, you can create, project, include, just project. That's all we need to do. Or you can hit P on the keyboard. And I believe, I may explain this wrong, but you want projection link checked, because that way if these edges change, when we change the diameter of these threads and stuff like that when we're testing, projection link will make sure our sketch follows that. If you don't have that clicked, when we change this body to a different diameter and stuff, this sketch won't change. So let's select the geometry. We want this edge, this edge, this, and this, and we can hit OK. And if we hide that first sketch and we hide the bodies, you can see it projected those lines. So now we can click on this line and hit X on the keyboard to turn it to construction line, X on the keyboard. And this, if you remember, is that minor diameter and major diameter. So let's hold shift and click and click. And if we go down to the right, you can see we have a 0.255 millimeter clearance, which is pretty much perfect. That's usually what I shoot for, either 0.2 millimeters or 0.25 if depending on the size of the cap, but this is pretty good. So let's check the inside wall of the cap compared to the major diameter, and that's at 0.2. And I may want to bump this up to like 0.25. So how do we do that? Well, we go up, let's finish sketch. Let's turn our body back on. Let's hide the sketches. We go up to our parameters, and we can now change this. So let's do like 32.6 and hit OK. And that's going to update the model. And the reason I don't know if I explained this, the reason we did that parameter is because if we change the diameter of the cap, we would then have to go back inside the coil tool and change the diameter of the coil. But since these are both set to that parameter, it just updates it automatically. And so now this is still touching this wall. Okay, let's go back to the sketch. Let's go to bottom view. Let's turn these bodies off, and let's turn on that sketch. And now you can see this updated. So if we click this and click this, now we're at 0.3. So I went too far. So let's go to parameter. This will just be 32.5 and hit OK. And now let's check again. 0.25 millimeters. So I think our clearance is about perfect. Let's turn the bodies back on. Awesome. I think we have a good cap here. I bet this is going to work on the first try. And I haven't tested this yet. I'm doing this right off the cuff. Okay. So let's clean up our model a little bit. First, let's join the threads in the cap. So we'll go up to combine, and we're going to combine these two. It's on join, and we'll hit OK. So now you can see we only have one body. Everything's one. Let's bevel this face so it's not such a harsh edge. So you select this face, hit M for move, and let's make sure it's kind of not right. So let's click on that face again. There we go. You want to make sure this is planar, right? So this is X, Y, Z, not at an angle. So I'm going to take this handle and rotate it. Let's just go like 65 and hit OK. And let's do the same for the other one. M for move. You see it's kind of selecting this edge here. We want it to select this face. That way this isn't curved. And let's do 65. Hit OK. And let's add maybe a little chamfer here to thicken it up. I'm just going to do like a 1 millimeter chamfer. And I'm just holding shift and selecting all of these edges. And let's do like a 0.3 chamfer on this. Okay, there is our bottle cap. And let's just do a quick double check of, we still have our nice clearances here. Okay, I'm going to hit print. I'm going to send this to my printer, and if it fits, actually I'll show you. I'm going to take it off the printer and I'll put it on the bottle. If it doesn't fit, we'll come back in and tweak this.
All right, here is the cap we just printed and the bottle. And let's see if this threads on real easy. That is basically a perfect fit. There's some wiggle room in here, but it seats nice and tight. It's on straight, so remember that bottom lip on this bottle that was kind of a cap stop. It's not that the cap isn't sitting crooked or anything, which means we got our pitch right. Comes off easy. Screw it on tight. All right, so we got that cap to fit perfectly. Now remember, if it was too tight, you could go back and change some of the, you could change this inside cap diameter, you could increase that, you could, the coils, you could change the section size to make this, these threads a little smaller. And actually, when we made that parameter in the beginning, you could have added more parameters to make those changes easier. We did that cylinder, we only did the diameter, but you could also add the height in here. You could also add a parameter for the section size of the coil. So there's lots of things you can do with parameters to make changing this really easy. Now, one thing to consider as well is the width of this thread. It may be a case, depending on how you're making these threads, that the thread actually doesn't fit. So if you've changed all the parameters and it's still a really tight fit, even though you have really good, even though you've created really good clearance, it might be a case of the threads themselves being too wide and not fitting in between the other threads on the bottle. So a few things you got to keep in mind, but we got it on the first try, and you should be able to use this technique for any bottle cap. Let me know what you think in the comments, and thanks for watching.